So happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to the Contractor's Survival Guide to your first BIM project. We're going to be focusing on what electrical contractors need to know before bidding, staffing, and executing your first BIM job. We've got a couple of esteemed guests here. So I'll start off. I myself am Jared Sutliff. I'm one of the co-founders of BIM Technology Management. I've been in the commercial construction industry for 17-ish years. Started my career working on the construction management side, doing virtual construction sites for presentations and proposals, and then jumped into the electrical contractor side, doing clash detection coordination, BIM modeling, helping engineering with design models, those kind of things. And also working on creating models that don't just look good on a screen, but actual help the field teams install smarter, coordinate better, reduce rework, and transition that into fabrication. I am also one of our trainers on our BIM Accelerate program, specifically focused on the electrical side, where we teach real BIM implementation in Revit for electrical systems, not your walls, windows, doors, etc. I'm outside of the world of BIM and VDC. I am a little bit of a BIM nerd. Any of you that may or may not know me, I haven't drank beer in about 15 years. I only taste and evaluate now. So I might reference that a time or two. And finally, for those of you, if you're not familiar with BIM Technology Management, we are 100% US-based VDC consulting company that works with MEP firms, GCs, and CMs. We help support coordinating, modeling, prefab workflows, and all with a strong focus on constructability and actually making BIM useful for you and your projects. And our esteemed guest here is Bobby Roop from Slifco Electric. Bobby, I'll let you talk a little bit about your industry experience and yourself here, and we'll get into the rest of the webinar.
Sure. Yeah, I thought you were going to mention your sourdough bread, but you forgot to mention that. So,
well, I mean, it is the bullet point there on under my under my brief description. So
that's
I'll
I'll
nerd out about that all day long too. So
okay. Yeah, so appreciate you guys having me on here today. Excited to talk about this topic. For me, industry experience, 20 plus years on the electrical side. Started out at a design engineering firm, so that's kind of where I cut my teeth, was over there, learning how to design buildings. So everything from layouts to one lines, panel schedules, all that sort of stuff. And about 18 years in BIM specifically. As soon as Revit came out to the MEP world was when I was able to fortunately get my hands on it. I didn't know then how it was going to kind of guide my career, but here we are today. So 18 years later is pretty wild. I mentioned yesterday, it's my experience is old enough to drink, and apparently my BIM experience is old enough to go to war for us now too. So,
all right.
But yeah, so over the last really 18, 15 years or so, really focused on the construction side of things. So career moved into, construction side of VDC, so focused on electrical, again, jumping down. I too enjoy mentoring and training, setting up standards, processes, all that sort of stuff. And the little note down there at the bottom, I'm a mushroom apparently. I'm big into the outdoors. I like hunting and fishing, and have a wife and 3 little ones that keep me pretty busy as well. I have not, so I see the comment in there from Anne. I'm terrible at finding morels.
That's too bad.
I've looked, I've only found like two ever, and they were like in my yard, so not good at
Mhm.
morel hunting.
Right. Well, and I will also say Slifco and Bobby specifically, one of our clients, and met you close to 2-ish years ago, and we started talking about a lot of the things that we do at BIMTM, what you guys need, and that's kind of spearheaded the conversation that we're talking about today with Bobby's experience using third party uh, vendors and consultants to help them out. And so we're really going to talk about, okay, you're pursuing your first BIM project or you've won your first BIM project. Now what? There's a lot of things that we'll get into as far as like red flags during the bidding process. And BIM, I've been utilizing this analogy for quite a while. BIM is a tool, and how you use the tool will ultimately lead you to success or failure on your project. Like you can't cut a conduit with a hammer, right? And then we'll talk a little bit about like survival checklists and stuff towards the end. And then we've got the key takeaways that are really going to matter when pursuing your first project, as far as the BIM requirements or BIM execution plan, terminology that really matters, what constitutes a good BIM partner, and how BIM can change construction or how it will change during the construction process here as well. And so one thing as well, any questions at all during the webinar, please feel free to put them in the meeting chat. We will, if it's pertinent to the slide, we'll address it at that point. Otherwise, we do have a Q&A at the end as well. So a couple of things that we want to talk about right off the bat here is why contractors lost their shirt on BIM jobs. Um, so we'll talk estimation, terminology, and all those kind of things. If you haven't done this before, you'll look at a project and be like, oh, BIM, it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. So we're going to estimate, say, 120 hours on this project. Well, BIM execution plan and BIM coordination schedule indicates 30 weeks of coordination and 2 1-hour meetings a week. Well, that's 60 hours, right? So that already chews up half of the estimate, and you haven't even thought about modeling or adjustments or any of the other scope parts of an actual project itself. Um, and as projects evolve as well, each of the types of projects are very different. Are we doing a hospital that has a higher level of development, or are we just doing a warehouse? And Bobby, with your experience on a wide variety of projects and your experience over the last 2 decades here, what have you seen fighting uh, for projects like this and working on uh, translating the terminology and the project scope to project managers or estimators?
Yeah, how much time do we have here? We have
Right. Well,
this is only so much
we
time.
got 49 minutes, so
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the translation thing is huge. So, just looking at your screen here, BIM gets treated like just another requirement and broad brushing. I like to use the analogy a lot in different areas, but if you go from baking a pie, and what is that pie? Maybe it's an apple pie, and the estimators know what it takes to make that apple pie, and
mhm.
they've got it down to a T, how long it takes, all the ingredients and everything. And then now we're switching to making a pizza pie,
Hmm.
but it's different ingredients, different time, and everything else. They might both be pies, but totally different ingredients, times, things like that.
Right.
So, the big one is, if you go from an industrial project to a hospital, or data centers or battery manufacturing facilities, or if it's a commercial building, don't treat each one of those the same way. Every
Mhm.
one of them's different. Each one has different BIM execution plans, requirements from not only your client as the GC, but owners get involved as well. And sometimes
Sure.
owners have their own requirements. So yeah, the biggest thing there is um, don't broad brush BIM. Don't think that every project is going to be the same. You know, I would highly encourage people to get a BIM expert or somebody knowledgeable in BIM to get involved early on the estimation side, even if it's just reviewing drawings, models, and execution plans.
Okay. And it sounds like with those different projects as well, one of the other kind of bullet points we have here is defining the actual deliverable. What are we going to be doing with this this model, this project, this BIM process? We've heard a lot where, oh, this is just a project requirement. Well, then that's going to be just a wasted effort. So we're making this pretty picture, but if we're not actually using it for anything, there really isn't a point to the exercise other than wasting money. If we're not going to follow the modeled locations or the clash detected model, or if we're not utilizing it with the intelligent information for prefabrication opportunities, if we don't know what our target is, how do we know that we're pointing even in the right direction? When we were
Yeah.
talking earlier as well yesterday, you said that some of your estimates, they just use a certain percentage of the overall project man hours. And
Yeah.
a couple of things that will take will change that quite drastically is the level of development, which we do have a great graphic on an upcoming slide about that. So, Bobby, the percentage of man hours, want to provide some insight on that?
Sure. I think, from an estimating perspective, I mean, we're trying to get in the ballpark, right? And so I think, there's a couple different approaches. You can take a square footage mentality, right? And kind of look at, okay, the square footage of the project, look at your systems, and go that way. And then,
Mm-hmm.
or there's, again, what's happened a lot recently is looking at total man hours on a project and then applying a percentage to that. I think you can get in the ballpark there, but again, from a hospital to a data center or a commercial project or something, uh, you know, how different baseball fields, I don't know how if you're a baseball guy or not, but
Mm-hmm.
all the professional MLB stadiums are different dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
The infield base dimensions are all the same, but your outfield lines are different. And so a guy can easily hit a home run at this field, but this other field might be, 50 yards deeper or something like that. So I think it's just thinking through that perspective of okay, this gets us in the ballpark from a budget perspective. But if you're really trying to button down and understand how many hours something's going to take, you really got to dive deeper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I have up here as well is the BIM execution plan. And the BIM execution plan does talk about very specific aspects of the project deliverables, the level of development, roles and responsibilities, data exchange, and all of these kind of things. If this is not a part of the process, you might miss a lot of important aspects of uh, the actual hours that it's going to take to uh, successfully execute um, the estimate and the true hours that it's going to take. And so like it'll usually talk about like a weekly flow of work. Like I said, the level of development, who's responsible for what, installation sequencing, and then also the hierarchy as well. So which one of the trades has a higher priority over another trade? And that's going to be a big important issue when it comes down to who's got to move for who else. And developing that rapport is going to be great for, hey, I need you to move here, but then in another location, you can move for me. So there's a lot of benefits from having the right kind of support partner who's been in the trenches and who can provide the insight and that experience of many years of being on crappy jobs with really crappy outcomes. Nobody likes it, but we've all been a part of it. We've all dealt with it. So those lessons learned, we can definitely use those to our advantage on everything going forward.
Yeah, I'd like to add something too for the nobody defines the actual deliverable. So there's a couple components because I remember, again, back in the early days, the idea and concept of BIM was, the building information modeling, right? And the big one being the I, and then the information that you can extract from the model. And what was sold to the owner or the client back then, and this is dating it a bit, but the idea of your maintenance guy being able to jump into a model, or your facilities department jumping into a model and being able to understand how all the systems are connected, or even a light fixture. Okay, this light fixture, this is where it dates me a bit, is 4T8 lamps, right? And this is the color temperature of the lamps. And so if that lamp is burned out, we know how to replace it. I think what we're missing a lot still is it dives deeper into what is the as-built requirement. So there's a disconnect kind of still right now where we get through modeling and coordinating, and it's kind of dumb information in a way, like we use it for construction. And then there's an as-built component that's supposed to go back to the engineer. But what is that? And then is the engineer updating their model to a true as-built condition with all of that information built into it? I think that again is a big open item. And again, the as-built requirement is huge because it's easy to understand all the upfront stuff, or maybe it's easy, maybe not. But a lot of people forget about the as-built requirement. And I've had to go through and completely as-built projects, meaning walking on site, taking photos of conduit routing and coming back and then modeling the true as-built conditions of branch conduits. And so that hour or those hours are typically not accounted for. So again, for the electrical contractor to think about, how do you build that in your budget where you have a decent amount of potential hours? Ideally, the as-built is the model, right? That's what everybody goes into it. Well, there shouldn't be any changes because this is all coordinated. But I can promise you, like, there's going to be as-built conditions. There's going to be field coordinated issues that are never caught up in the modeling process or on drawings. So as-builts are huge. I like this model that you're flying through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a sample model we put together. I believe we have it on our website as well, just to explore. And I guess the last thing is how do we make sure, or at least get those conversations started, so the office team, the BIM team, the field staff, the prefab shop, we're all aligned on the expectations and outcomes that we're looking for through this process. Because if we're all stuck in silos, it's not going to be a great project, right? It's going to be just like any other issue that we've had in a various set of projects where, once again, estimating or the the PM doesn't want to dedicate the hours, or the field team gets the drawings and they say, oh yeah, those look good. And then come to find out that they didn't use it, or they got the prefab and they threw the prefab in the garbage and they just built it how they wanted to build it anyways. So to that point, I will say, having those conversations, we talk about early involvement, and the same goes with the field staff. I've been in this industry for 17, 18 years. I've never done installation. I've never been, I'm not not an apprentice. I'm not actually been a part of it. So I'm honest about that when I jump onto a project and work with the foreman. Say, hey, my background is art and design. Show me how this is going to work for you and how you would do this, and leverage their expertise and their experience. And then I can provide my experience and my expertise in the modeling and coordination and identifying constructability issues early, or, hey, the drawing detail says X, Y, and Z, but that doesn't make any sense to me. How do we need to address this? Is it an RFI? Is it maybe they know something, or they saw a note in the spec that answers the question?
Yeah, it's really easy. I mean, to, like you said, be caught up in silos. And so, again, I highly encourage anybody listening, anybody that's new to some of this, or trying to get better at it, that communication between the field and the BIM group, whoever's doing your modeling, and the project management is huge. So I can get in, even like your drawing that you have on the screen there. We do have a stair there. I'm trying to think, like, but I might say, okay, I'm living in this 3D model. It makes a lot of sense for me to do, come up and over and bend it this way and go that way, or put the pull box there in front of the stair.
Right.
It makes a lot of sense. It's clean, it's accessible. And then the field gets involved, and they're standing out there on the job site, like, why did he put this here? And they want to move it, or they think it was stupid. So I mean, that's a little example, but when it comes to routing and things like that, it's really important to get buy-off from the field. Because again, there is some animosity between what we're doing on this side and the field a bit. And we need to kind of bridge that gap and make sure we're all on the same page. The best way to do that is getting them involved earlier too. Getting them signing off and approving things earlier, then it says, hey, look, we're all on the same page here. We agree with it. The last thing we want to do is go through this effort, and like you mentioned, the field be out there and asking and wondering why we did something, and then deciding to do something different. What I try to tell them is, if it's wrong or uninstallable, then bring up the issue. If you find a better way, or you think there's a better way, but it's what I've done isn't wrong, then I appreciate your input. We'll take it moving forward. But I've already done all the thinking up front, spent a lot of time designing it, coordinating it, modeling, detailing. Please just run with what I have. Don't try to spend more time thinking about it or re-engineering the system. Again, that's hours and time that isn't in the estimate. We really have one shot to get this done right, and we can't have the field second guessing or redesigning things, because again, now we're just burning more hours.
Right. And one of the things as well is they're out on site, and overhead plumbing hasn't been installed yet. So we're seeing this wide open area. Well, this is stupid. Why are we so low? Let's run high.
Yeah.
Well, that's the reason. And because that hasn't been installed in site, it looks like it was done stupidly. But
exactly.
And that's where,
why didn't they go high and tight with these conduits? I can get way up there or whatever, right? And they're not seeing the big picture. So a big point there too is get your guys in the field access to the model. They should be, in my opinion, reviewing drawings, construction drawings, and then at the same time getting their head wrapped around the virtual model as well.
Mhm.
before they even start the day, before they start their tasks, so they can understand why. I mean, that's what ends up painting the rest of the picture. If they don't have access to the model or are not flying it every day or viewing it, like they're going to be lost.
Mhm. And then to a question to that point, then as well, some of these the field staff are, they understand installation. They understand I need to be out there, tape measure, all of that. So we need to also be cognizant of the technology barriers that may exist and help them. So even if they, if they're not comfortable running the model, okay, let's go up to site together. I want to sit down with you. Let's review this. You looking over my shoulder or projecting on a screen, or even a screen share through Teams like we're doing on this webinar. Let's look at this. Let's review it. I've got issues and questions that I've come across that you need to be aware of, and being able to show them the information, the why, but then also having it be where we can address those issues and track those issues so that when it does come to the site installation, they know where it is and know who they can rely on to get questions answered, and still let them be in control and in charge of the project itself.
Yeah. No, we I know you guys offer training, and then internally it was maybe a month or so ago, I put on a little training session for our entire company basically. I think I don't know if there's 20, 30, 40 people, whoever was in that,
Mhm.
just to show them how to use Navisworks Freedom, from a high
Excellent.
level. And then that training session was recorded, and we have it saved up on our library, and
Excellent.
they can jump back in and view it. But it is huge. We can't again, the electricians are electricians.
Mhm.
They're good at bending pipe and pulling wire. As far as technology, some guys are good at it, some guys don't want anything to
Mhm.
do with it. So it's
Mhm.
finding those guys that are good at it, that are interested in the technology side, again, getting them trained and taught up on how to fly the model. It can be maybe a little intimidating, right, at times,
Mhm.
but once you get into flying, they're going to see how big of a benefit it is. And again, it just goes back to that buy-in,
Mhm.
getting the field to buy in. Once they start seeing the benefits of all of this, that's when your productivity really starts to boom.
Mhm.
If they're apprehensive or pushing back, that alone is going to cause delays. So
Yeah. Right. Right. Well, and to kind of touch base on a little bit more, the it is not just a model. It's not just a pretty picture. We can have some of that data or that information for the sake of the acronym. So we can get trade size, we can get material type, we can get the to and from or source load information, um, you know, bottom of conduit elevation, service type, even when we get into branch circuitry, we can get into the nitty gritty of, how many circuits. So, in this case, then this information translates from the Revit model into the Navis model, and then we can also extract that information into into tags and put it on sheets and provide that information to the installation team and or uh, the prefab, so they can put those tags on the conduit itself. So we've got here's our load. We've got these circuits uh, from the where is it LP1 panel. So all of that information is great, and uh, the other thing is it can also be garbage too. So uh, a lot of the information in, information out, how that translates. It is a lot of effort to make all of this happen, but when it's done correctly and properly, we can really make some intelligent headway and assist the field and assist the prefab identify installation issues, and help them understand why it looks stupid with the current state of the site, and how we can assist with the impacts that it can. So hopefully it doesn't actually negatively affect the schedule, and theoretically we can keep it on task and on track here. A couple of BIM terms specific. We talked BIM execution plan. That is where the general contractor will call out specific requirements for the project for the BIM model or information, even getting into some facility management types of things if that is a owner requirement. Level of development or level of detail. Our next slide, I believe, has the really awesome graphics, so we'll talk more about that. What the difference between coordination and clash detection is. What is model handoff or final deliverable for the BIM efforts, and then also the as-built model versus a coordination model. All of those will be spelled out in the specifications or BIM execution plan, and all of those, depending on what the project requirements are, has an impact to the time and effort needed to have your project become successful, and just things to watch out for, and how they can potentially be scope gaps if we weren't looking at that when doing the original bid.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I'd like to kind of go back just for a second. So we were talking about the I in BIM and the information that you can glean out of it. You know, like your example and our examples right now are all from the electrical contractor's perspective, us getting into the model, us actually designing it, modeling it, coordinating it as it should be built. I want to throw a little red flag up, and I know we have red flag coming, but
Yep.
What scares me, and this happens every project, it seems like, and you know, for project managers, estimators out there listening, electrical contractors, when you get a design model from an engineer, take the model with a grain of salt. You know, and I'm still going through this right now. They use Revit as a drafting tool generally, right? They are modeling for some level of coordination, but the coordination might get you 50-60%. Some jobs are better than others, but ultimately they're putting that model together so that they can produce bid documents, right? And so a couple examples, they might have conduits spread across so that they can show 20 or 30 of them. But in reality, we might stack them, right, and put 10, 10, 10. They might have, and this is real world example, a wall of receptacles. Maybe the wall is 20 feet wide and they've just got receptacle, receptacle, receptacle on their print. Well, in the model, they have all of these boxes spread out across that 20-foot wall. But really, those receptacles are supposed to be stacked and vertical and closer together, because, again, they're just trying to produce a 2D print that can go out for bids. And so I really hesitate to get a ton of information or lean too heavily on whatever the engineer modeled, right? And so they'll have wrong conduit sizes modeled, and then they'll tag them as something else, right? So there's panels that are modeled incorrectly. They usually use general sizes, you know, for panels, light fixtures. So just be super careful of putting too much stake in that engineer model. Just wanted to throw that out there.
No, that's a really good point, and you know, that's brings me into another point. Like, with the coordination is more than just clash models and reports. It's communication between teams. It's understanding the engineered drawings. It's meetings, calls, model adjustments, field teams. You know, and like the clash detection portion. You know, it's actually finding those individual clashes and issues and making the adjustments digitally. There's a handful of different programs out there. Probably everybody's familiar with Navisworks. That's what we're looking at. But there's also like Deluxe and Revisto, and you can also do that within the Revit platform as well with your linked files. So there's a lot of things that we can do there. So wrong window, here we go. And then now the level of development or level of detail. And I love this sandwich analogy because it really helps at least me visualize, what's a lot of the differences between it. And if you haven't seen this before, this is where this really matters from an estimation standpoint from the BIM part of the project. And as you can see, the higher level we actually go, the more the finer the modeled elements need to be, and the more information that can be extracted out needs to be. So you can see like the LOD 300 is the detailed geometry and components representing the construction documentations. Oftentimes, as Bobby was talking, the engineer model will be somewhere between, say, LOD 200 and 300. And then when the subcontractor gets to it, oftentimes, if it's, I'm going to say a more simple, which isn't quite the right term I'm looking for, but this is going to be focusing on constructability, coordination between all trades. Hopefully, everybody's on the same page with that. And this is getting into also putting in some hangers and rack systems, so we can make sure that we can actually get to the structure above without clashing with the other trades and the other systems. And then when we get into 400, this model isn't set up for it, but then it'll actually start getting into the actual nuts and bolts of the systems. So depending on the project requirement, we may have square washers, the lock nuts, regular nuts, strut straps, etc. within that. Same with some of the bracketry and supports for the MP side of things and FP side of things. You can see, like, plumbing wise, we've got clevis hangers and those kind of things. The other value that we can derive out of this as well is, because we have these locations in the model itself, we can also provide robotic total station points or layout points digitally, and that will help streamline your layout. Because we've spent the time and the effort, I know in my floor plan, I can give you exact placement of each of these rods, or the rod locations, so we can put say cast in place embeds in the deck before concrete's poured, and then they're identified via color, and then when it's time to install in the field, they can just thread the rod up and in. You don't have somebody on a scissor lift jackhammering into concrete or any of those types of things, which also reduces potential safety hazards and just streamlines a lot of aspects. So doing BIM just as a requirement, well, we can actually get a lot more out of it than just fulfilling that project requirement itself.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And you're spot on, again, back to the engineer side of things, there's somewhere between that 200 and 300, again, some are better than others. And then typically, we land somewhere between the 350 and 400, on the construction side. For us at Slifco, we're moving closer to 400 with getting into spooling, and so when you think of mechanical, their piping, even their HVAC, they've been doing spooling for a while. I mean, they're always a little bit ahead of us, right? And so they've been doing coordination longer than us, and they've been doing spooling longer than us. But when you get into spooling, we've got a couple example drawings there. That gets you, into that 400, even closer to 500 sometimes, depending on how far into it you want to go. But again, it's just getting back to the beginning. What's the expectation? What's the output? What are you trying to get out of it is so important up front, because it directs your direction of how you want to proceed in modeling. If you have an expectation that you want to do this, but you don't convey that up front, well, then there's different modeling approaches you might take. And then you get down the road, and now all of a sudden I want all this other information pulled out of it. And again, it goes back to the hours, the budget, time. The schedule is the biggest one, right? Like, hey, they're going to be installing this in 2 weeks. I want all this information. Well, the boat has kind of sailed past you, now. But no, there's so much you can get out of it. It's amazing to me, again, for as long as you and I have been doing this, that we're still even having some of these conversations, but it still seems like it's like a new world that we're living in. And we're, 2 decades almost into this, but, it's where we're at, and there's different people at different stages. But there's so much you can get out of it if you, have the right goal.
Yep, exactly. All right.
And
so
if we could go back to LOD, sorry.
Yep. No, all good.
One point I want to make is this is a standard LOD, description, but different. I say it quite frequently. Again, you really need to dive into the BIM execution plan, because some people have different understanding of what LOD 350 means or what LOD 400 is. So when I hear people throw out, hey, they're expecting LOD 400 on this job, I'm always asking, what does that mean? Because every job is different, every client's different, the owners have different understanding. This is a really good general idea of what it looks like, but every project's different. So I'd really, again, go back to the BIM execution plan and have them define, what does LOD 350 mean, right? What does LOD 400 mean? Now we can get into your red flags.
All right. Now, red flags. I love this shirt. I can't wait to actually have it be one of the things that I actually wear. But we've got those bullet points. One thing we really haven't talked much about is the schedule. Realistic timelines for coordination, model population, clash detection. Oftentimes they will compress it, and it'll be like 2 weeks per floor, and then construction starts a week after. Well, okay, we've got 15 RFIs that haven't been answered yet that are involving equipment sizes and locations, or VAVs, or sizes of ductwork, because we're not getting the right airflow in certain areas, and the construction timeline isn't slowing down. And so now all of a sudden we've got the field teams installing off of the engineer drawings, and we're still coordinating those areas. Or we've got parts of the building, say a clean room that has a lot more requirements for operational functioning and critical systems. And then another part of the building, we've got, say, an open air like cafeteria area. So those two areas are very different from the complexity. And if we're treating all of the areas as we need to identify and fix every tiny little clash, we're going to be wasting our time in that open air cafeteria area and ignoring the real issues from the complex area that can really benefit from the efforts of the BIM process and clash detection, coordination, constructability review.
Yeah,
A couple other things. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bobby.
sorry. No, I'm just thinking as you're talking there, and I love analogies, and sometimes they just come to my brain. But earlier I was talking about pies, but now
Yeah.
I'm thinking about cakes, and maybe I'm just hungry. I don't know, but
Yeah, it
you
is
know,
lunchtime, right?
yeah. So I was thinking about a wedding cake, right? And so if you've got a wedding coming up and you're planning ahead, right? Like, what kind of cake do you want? Is it a cupcake? Or is it a massive 4-tier cake with all this crazy stuff on it? Well, thinking of schedules, whether you want a cupcake or the 4-story tiered cake system, that's a big difference, right? Well, a lot of times we find out in BIM and construction that there's a requirement for a 4-tiered cake. The schedule is compressing, the wedding's this weekend. We don't even know what the bride is gluten free or whatever is sugar free. And so we're trying to figure out the ingredients the week before. And so
Right.
it rolls right into prefab, right? Because
Mhm.
if there's this prefab expectation and listen, the guys are hitting the job next week, they need all the material, they need their supports, all of that
Right.
stuff. Well, we have to back up, right? Because if that's needed, well, how long does it take to prefab it? And then
Right.
how long does it take to order the material to prefab it? And then, okay, when do I need to have my detailed drawings done? And then, by the way, I can't have my detailed drawings done until we're locked down in coordination, right?
Exactly.
And so that's the schedule, man, is like, it's crazy. And it seems like this last year, at least in our world, some of the projects we've been working on, I mean, they've been sacrificing BIM and the requirement for BIM to just press the schedule forward. So
Mhm.
be mindful of that. Again, the more pre-construction design talks and conversations you guys can have, the better you're going to be. Again, to figure out what kind of cake you want to eat at your wedding, because
Mhm.
when the closer the wedding day gets and you don't have all those details ironed out, you're going to end up with a cupcake. And
Right.
if there's grooms on this call, your wife or your bride is going to be upset with you when the wedding day is here and she gets a little cupcake.
Right. Yeah. And or well, that has gone pretty quick. Getting through a couple of the other slides. Spotting how to identify a good BIM partner. It's one of the things that I did even in my prior life working at an electrical subcontractor is just asking a lot of questions, diving in, um, helping make sure that you know your field experience, you've looked at the drawings. I'm going to look at them a completely different way, and my ignorance can sometimes be a benefit. Asking questions about constructability, how to communicate effectively. If I think I'm talking about an orange, but you're hearing me talk about a grapefruit, well, now we've got potential issues, scope gaps, and missing learning opportunities as well. And and it may, we've got the last bullet point here. It may look like magic, but it's a lot of real world experience and a lot of lessons learned that come into what really matters, and being honest about what you know and what you don't know um, can really make or break the difference. We've all experienced uh, uh, communication gaps or language barriers or time zone issues as well. Those can really impact your joy of the process or even the project, and have a bad taste in your mouth, and you say, oh nope, this isn't worth it, this is dumb, we're just going to do it the way we know that works.
Yeah, this is all good stuff, like from our perspective is, a lot of times we leverage your support and, so having a team or a partner that understands all of these things is super critical. And I've seen a lot of websites out there for a lot of BIM consultant services that, like you said, sell this magic. They might have, they will say, we've got thousands of BIM experts. And, I'm like, where are all these BIM experts at?
Right.
Because there's not thousands of them. That's the reality of it. And when you think
Well,
of our experience, like, again, you might know Revit and you might have learned it pretty well
mhm,
over the last year or 2 years ago. But if you've only done one project and that project was I like to use a toilet room renovation, you're not an expert.
right.
True experts are the ones that have lived in this world for years or decades now and
Mhm,
have seen all the good, the bad, and the ugly. So
mhm.
definitely highly, that's another red flag. If you see somebody that says they've got hundreds of BIM experts available,
Mhm.
red flag.
Well, and that goes back to, if you want a model that is just a pretty picture and you can't use it, sure, but that's not what we're here for. And if that's what you want out of the effort, I'm going to be honest and say we're missing the boat here, and there's a lot of other things that we can do and actually provide that value. So we've got a few bullet points here. Kind of your survival checklist is understanding the deliverable. What actually needs to happen before you submit your bid? Because if we're expecting, a LOD 300 model, but the BIMX plan says a 400 or better, well, that takes, that's a compounding of the time. um, Knowing the effort that's going to go into what the modeling requirements are and how much effort that's going to take, depending on the team's skill set, that's going to make a huge difference as well. Knowing what you can and can't handle internally, once again, is also going to make a huge difference in your ability to execute successfully. Um, Going back to what the final deliverable is and how we can align the field expectations, roll it into prefabrication, roll it into the BIM department, roll it into estimating, flow up and downstream is going to be vital to the success of your first BIM project. And as we've talked as well, understanding constructability of the model, of the project, of the requirements, takes it from a pretty picture that you can't use into something that you can translate into field opportunities, these prefab rack systems that with the robotic total station, you can put the four corners points down on site, and then they can just crane this assembly in and drop it in, and then your experts can make the connections from A to B. So we're getting up against it here, and the biggest thing is don't go into your first BIM job blind. I'm not a cardiologist, so if I'm having some issues with my heart, I'm going to go to the doctor. If if my HVAC takes a crap, I'm going to call, an HVAC specialist and get them in to make sure my furnace is running correct. So, that's what we're here for. We know we're not the right fit for everybody, but is all we can do is have a conversation and see if we can actually help you out and make something work. And one more shameless plug for the BIM Accelerate program. I'm the lead trainer on that, and leveraging my decades of experience and failures. Well, I was going to call it failures, but let me say lessons learned over my
Yeah.
career. And I'll talk about specific reasons to why you want to do certain things and not others, is because I've got stories for a lot of it, and um, very painful, many long nights and weekends because of those lessons that I've had to learn myself. So um, last thing here, we got a couple of minutes before we let y'all go back to your day. Any questions? I see we have Q&A's got a red dot here. So we've got, is there anything that I, as a general contractor, can do to help you guys during coordinations, besides not make you draw anything less than an inch and a half? There are actually that's a really great question there. From the GC side, helping us during coordination is making sure that the hierarchy of importance is being followed, not letting people slide with oh well we'll do that in the field, or oh we don't have the answer to that, or oh we don't know, and that's just a complete part of construction. But I would also say coordination schedule. If you can get whether it's the subcontractors involved earlier in the process, and this is even getting into 50% CDs. Start getting the experts involved with constructability while things are still being designed, because we can identify RFIs and missing gaps in the design early on while the engineers' minds are in it, while they're making decisions actively, working with the owners and identifying those trouble spots with those main systems early on, instead of getting through IFC set, then releasing it to the subcontractor. Then by the time they have the opportunity to really dive into those, we're 12 months down the road. The engineer's been out of it for 12 to 18 months. Now they've got 40 or 50 RFIs that now they've got to come out of their current projects, remember what they were doing on this project, come up with an answer, or just say, oh, well, it's in this note on this sheet. Well, this note says to refer to the architectural, which says refer to the engineer, which says refer to the subcontractor, and there still isn't the actual answer.
Yeah, that's spot on.
We've got
comments in the chat.
Yeah. You want to address the spooling sheets?
Yeah, so Blake asks, what are you guys using for your spooling sheets that were shown? So, I know Jared's going to like this too. We use Evolve, which is a very powerful Revit add-on. Just to give you a high level view of, if you're not familiar with Evolve, for us, like, we've been focused on the conduit modeling components and tools that are built into Evolve. There's a lot of other ones, but basically you can model your conduit racks, or whatever it is. And it's, maybe I'm dumbing it down too much, but once you're set up and you have your spool sheets created, templates created, it's essentially as easy as selecting your racks of conduit and hitting a spool button, and it breaks it all out for you. There's some cleanup and some detailing on the back end, but Evolve is a great, powerful tool for spooling. You can do it without Evolve, but it'd be a long, painful process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just a full disclosure, Evolve MEP is one of our partners. So that is one of the options, but there are other options out there as well that a lot of different companies use. And ultimately, for those types of tools, finding the right fit for yourself is definitely my recommendation. Asterisk, I'll say Evolve is the best, but that's also because partner, and I've also got the most experience with them, and the proof is in the pudding for me. Yeah. The other question, Zach, I would say no, it is not normal to model MC cable, even if it's LOD 500. But then that would also go back into the BIM execution plan and what the project requirements are. If it is for specifically electrical, every single run of half-inch and larger, then that may have to be modeled. The tough thing is with the MC, since it is the flexibility and if there is a little extra length and a loop in wall, modeling that in Revit is not easy. There are tools and Evolve. I don't have a lot of experience in it, but they do have an MC tool within the Evolve plugin that will allow you to do that kind of stuff as well. So definitely refer to the BIM execution plan for your MC cable, and even if it is in the BIMX plan, one thing I should have actually said when we were talking about that is just because it's in the BIMX plan doesn't mean that you have to follow it blindly. Ask the question, ask for alternates to the BIM execution plan if it doesn't make sense for the project and what the ultimate end goal is. If it's in there and you don't get any value out of it and the client doesn't get any value out of it, it's worth asking the question and pushing back a little bit on that. So, well, I apologize. We did go a few minutes over, but thank you everybody for joining us here today. And feel free to reach out. Any other questions that you may have, feedback on the webinar is greatly appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you for putting this on, Jared. It's good stuff.
Yep. Thanks for joining me, Bobby, and really appreciate your expertise and your guidance here on this.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great rest of your day.